Okay, so I took a slightly different approach to my presentation. I was imagining it more like a poster hanging on a hallway in a school. So I figured that it would mostly just be um, large visuals for people to glance at as they walk by. So I hope that's going to be uh, all right for everybody here today. So I might be a little bit short, but if you have any questions, if there's something I leave out, please feel free to ask at the end. I may have a lot more knowledge in my head than what's on this screen. So, um, all right, so we'll get started. So I took care of, I did my inventory on the city of Cambridge. I worked in coordination with the city arborist slash tree warden, David Lefcourt. David and Eric Josephson, who is the IT guy with the Department of Public Works, set me up with an iPad, a tablet, to help record my trees using a software program called Cartograph. And Cartograph was very helpful because I'm still very new to tree ID, and having the software there to help validate my guesses, or in most cases actually tell me what the tree was I was looking at, was very useful. So I took it also as very much as a tree ID learning experience, and for me that was maybe the most exciting part of this entire semester assignment. So yes, so back to Cambridge. Feel free to ask at the end if you would like any specs on the city as far as population, square mileage, and such. What I want to do is have you focus up here, and we'll kind of go in a counterclockwise way. If you can see my arrow, the mouse arrow around here, we'll just kind of swing around this way, and then we'll finish up in the center. So the tree warden, Mr. Lefcourt, did not really have a preference as to where I performed my tree inventory. And so it made sense to me to sort of stay local with streets that I'm familiar with and neighborhoods that I know well. And so if you take a look up here, you'll see the circle. This is North Cambridge, but it's also, it kind of bleeds into a few other neighborhoods. One of them is called Neighborhood 9, which is like kind of right about here. I live right here, right on the Somerville-Cambridge line. And you have North Cambridge, true North Cambridge is like right here. So I perform my tree inventory within this area, and also Porter Square. So we'll kind of take a look at those in a bit more in depth in a moment. So you can see that Cambridge has this unusual geometric shape. We have Arlington over here to the northwest. We have Medford, Somerville all along the top border here. The Charles River borders the entire southern part of Cambridge, this snaking blue. And of course, if most of you are familiar with this part of the state, Boston is located just across from the Charles River. So you'll see that this map, I intentionally chose this one because it has zoning. It has colors that represent different zones within the city. So for example, yellow is residential. But even within that, you might see, like, for example, C1A or BA2. These represent different like parcel sizes and the kind of structure that might be built on a property. For example, a two-family or a three-family house as opposed to a single residence. So there's some restrictions as to how high certain structures can be. So they're denoted by these letters here. So I worked within mostly residential areas, with the exception of Porter Square, which is a dense commercial area. So I'm going to digress a bit. I broke my my inventory into 4 streets, but I also like to refer to them as sort of zones, because I think the streets represent more than just what we think of as a road with sidewalks and a house. The zones, as you'll see here, I've put them in color: 1, 2, 3, 4. They also have dollar signs next to them. So this represents the median income for each area. And you can see, even within just a small part of Cambridge, that the median income changes very quickly depending on where you live, even within this small area. So for example, this zone 1 area here has a median income of median household income of $89,000 a year. Whereas you skip over to zone 3, which has $3 signs, and you're looking at close to $110,000 a year. So the purpose of doing this was to see, one, does the tree condition, is there anything to say about the trees based upon what zone they're located in? In more plain terms, if you live in a better neighborhood, and I put better in quotations, a neighborhood with more green space, more sidewalk space, more lot size, are you going to have better trees? So that was the kind of purpose of selecting these particular streets that, again, I worked in an area that I was familiar with, and I was able to tell right off the bat that these 3 areas were going to have different levels of wealth. Now, the outlier here is number 4. Number 4 is Porter Square, and I added that in because Porter Square, like many dense commercial zones, has a lot of concrete, and trees there are subject to exposure and abuse and all the other little delights that I've shown you in prior weeks, from passerby and from cars and from pollution and all this. So I added Porter Square in there as well. But for our purposes, most of this presentation is going to be focusing on zones 1, 2, and 3. So zone 1 is Dudley Street. And if you follow my mouse here, it runs in this diagonal direction from southwest to northeast. Number 2 is Fairfield Street, and Fairfield runs in this direction from northwest to southeast. Zone 3 is Washington Avenue, and Washington runs also northwest to southeast. And then finally, Massachusetts Avenue running through Porter Square, and it makes this arc right through the pink. Okay. So one of the approaches that I took was just to focus solely on sharing data about my inventory, as opposed to comparing, a lot of existing data about the city's trees to mine. So I figured it would just be more interesting to talk about what I found, as opposed to just reading up on Cambridge and posting information on that. The one exception is these 2 pie charts on the left. I already know that Cambridge has about 19,000 public trees, which includes street trees, parks, and open spaces. If you count state-owned trees or trees owned by other entities, but not private, it brings you to about 21,000 trees for the city. But the Urban Forestry Division and David Lefcourt are responsible for about just over 19,000 trees. So between 4 zones, as you saw up here, I did roughly 25, I inventoried roughly 25 trees per zone to give me a total of 100 trees. And as you can see here on the 2 pie charts, I wanted to compare, first of all, do the city's numbers regarding their species diversity match up to what I found in my inventory? And I was shocked to find out, yes. There's some variation here. If you take a look at honey locust, there's about a 2.5% difference. But for the most part, I mean, these charts look almost identical. And the only tree that I found more commonly on my route than is representative in the city is little leaf linden and Callery pear. So that was something I wasn't expecting. With such a small sample out of 19,000, it was surprising. So, let's go back. So moving along counterclockwise, one of the things that I thought was interesting to take a look at would be DBH. Aside from tree IDing, I thought DBH was probably was the second most exciting part of the inventory. Pulling out a tape measure, getting your arms around trees, feeling like a scientist out in the field. It was like, that was very cool. So I wanted to talk more about DBH, and my instinct kind of told me that, and this may not be true, but it's that DBH reflects some level of health within a tree. If a tree is not growing after many years or since its last inventory, and then perhaps it's an older mature tree, perhaps it's not healthy. So I wanted to look at DBH and just see how that changes from the last inventory, species, the zone the tree's located in, the pit size, and its class. And I think Eric touched on this as well, class size, which is, I had just grouped the trees by a range of inches. So I'll start here on the bottom. I labeled class 1 any tree that was between 0 and 4.9 inches DBH. Class 2, between 5 and 8.9 inches. Class 3, 9 and 12.9 inches. Class 4, 13 and 17.9 inches. And class 5, anything over 18 inches. I simply ran out of space in the Excel spreadsheet to go beyond 5. So 18 plus, and I figured, you're at that point, you're a mature older tree, and you can be in the same class together. So taking a look here, I was curious to see which zones. So again, zone 1 being Dudley Street, zone 2 Fairfield, zone 3 Washington, zone 4 Porter Square, which zones had which DBH classes, which could also be synonymous with age. And these are my findings. So if we take a look here, DBH class 1, zone 4, Porter Square, had mostly younger trees. And that makes sense. I know that Mr. Lefcourt has been wanting to plant as much as he can in the commercial, dense, urban heat island parts of Cambridge. Can you guys, did you guys hear my, hold on. Sorry. So I'll just touch on that one note for this square, which is that David Lefcourt had mentioned that he wanted to really be planting as much as possible in urban heat island zones, and that would substantiate why we see so many younger trees in zone 4 as compared to the other zones. The next block up here, DBH increased by DBH class. Again, I would say there was one surpriser in this. You know, class 1, I'm expecting young trees to increase, you know, somewhat, you know, drastically in their first few years. And that would be since their last inventory, which was a couple of years ago. Most of the inventory was done within the last 2 years. But what I was surprised at was to see class 4 older trees ahead of class 2 and class 3 in their increase in DBH. So is that something about a late age growth spurt, or is that more to do with, well, I just happen to inventory older trees that are in better conditions, better soil conditions, better environmental conditions. So that was an interesting thing that I haven't taken any other variables into account, but I'd maybe like to explore later down the road. The top box up here, DBH increased by species, and as you can see here, American elm took the crown with, and this is all the American elms that I had on my list, 1.2 inches annual average growth. So I just thought that was interesting, and I'll move on here to the last square. Just like we saw in Eric's report, I was curious to see the overall picture of the tree inventory, the trees in the inventory, and how they're doing. And with the exception of Zone 2, which was Fairfield Street, the one with $2 signs, all of these were given a good score using the iTree scorecard of above 90%. So I guess I was expecting Porter Square, this urban area, and Dudley, which also has a lot of concrete, to be on the lower end, and that was not the case at all. So I was very surprised that Dudley and Porter Square both scored the highest in overall condition. 92% of the trees were in good condition. Do I have time to give my recommendations?
Yes. Yeah, we have 3 other talks to get through here, and we're over halfway through the class, but go ahead. If you can give it a snapshot.
Yep. So Cambridge is doing a lot of things really well. So I just felt like based on my observations walking around, and I kind of alluded to this in prior classes, that I think staking is a problem. And I think that maybe we should look, we plant bare root trees here, so perhaps staking is necessary for that structural purpose, but I'm finding that too many stakes, the bands are girdling and causing havoc to the bark, and it just seems like it's an issue of crews not getting around to adjust them or take them off. So my recommendation is you need people to be out there checking on them manually to make sure that they're not damaging these trees that were spent so much time and resources putting in the ground. The second thing is I recommend single detached stake holds for bags, no more trunks. So certainly put a small stake in the ground and then put an irrigation bag, a gator bag over them. The gator bags are also causing an issue. I found one gator bag that was on the tree trunk for 8 years, and I removed that. So I think remove after the second year, depending on if as long as we're not in drought, that or the tree doesn't look like it's doing too poorly, take the bag off. And then cleaning, weeding, composting, amending for compaction in tree pits. So I found that pits were commonly in really tough shape. So I would just recommend maybe having what's analogous to a pit crew, and making a stronger effort to get, I know there's a lot of really go-getters, enthusiastic people in Cambridge who would probably come out and do this for free. So I think getting the word out that we need people to help help take care of our trees, and then making these 3 items just the only priority they need to do. So, all right, time.
All right, great. Thank you.